Okay, thank you. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Island Skye and Raasay Area Committee. We'll start off, as always, with apologies for absence, Alistair.
There's no apologies, Stuart.
Okay, and I know that Councillor Stewart hasn't yet arrived, so hopefully he will at some stage. Declarations of interest or transparency statements.
I've not received any, Chair.
Okay, members, anyone, Councillor Miller?
Sorry, I wasn't thinking. I should have declared probably a transparency statement as one of my sons is a serving police officer, but then applied the test, and I can happy to stay at the meeting.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, moving on to our first item, the Police Scotland Local Committee Performance Report. I'm talking about currently serving officers. My understanding is that Inspector Mackenzie might not be serving much longer, and this might be your last appearance at our area committee, Ali. Is that correct?
Good morning, everybody. Yes, that's correct, Councillor. I've got 2.5 working weeks left, and I officially retire on the 30th of June. So 30 years policing. You would never have thought that, but yes, that's me.
No, you look as young as you did the day you started. But okay, so before we start, we thank you for your service to Police Scotland and also to our area, Ali, and we certainly wish you the best for your future. Hopefully you're staying on the island, and I'm sure we'll bump into you. But thank you for your service to date.
Thank you.
Previously, as you know, we weren't over enamored with the fact that you're not presenting us with a particularly local report, and again, that's nothing to do with you personally. So it's really a South Highland area command, but I'm sure all members may still have questions. So I'll hand over to you, Alistair, if there's anything that you want to particularly highlight in the report.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just go over what's been said there. That it is a South Highland level report, which also incorporates Bannock and Strathspey, Nairn, Lochaber, and ourselves here in Skye and Raasay. We continue to see real challenges within our communities in terms of the cost of living. Policing is no different than anywhere else in that respect. Rural living may seem to be ideal to some, but for others there is a significant impact. Support networks can be very limited for people, resulting in them coming into contact with the police where they are a particular low ebb, but also those that seek to profit from hardship with the potential for increases in the cause of crime. Particular products such as heating fuel become increasingly expensive. Rural communities are more reliant on these items, and as a result of our vigilance must increase. So my team are continuing to work wherever we can with partners to protect the vulnerable people within our communities. We also work with roads policing and try to maintain a presence on our roads, enforcing road traffic legislation, improving roads safety, and investigating road traffic collisions. And of course, here in the Skye and Lacalsh, we have quite a considerable amount of RTCs, and we try our best to try and reduce that numbers with engagement with visitors at locations close to roads which have seen most incidents, so we can reduce the road casualties. We focus also on road safety and reflection of drink driving offences being detected by officers, and we'll continue to highlight the harm that this can create to the communities. We have had slight increase in housebreakings and a reduction in shoplifting offences, but for Skye and Lacalsh, that is relatively low. We do have increased fraud, which includes various fraudulent schemes perpetrated primarily over the internet, telephone, and through various apps. And some of them are quite sophisticated and are out with the UK. But we do try to provide crime reduction and prevention where we can, because we do understand there's quite a lot of vulnerable people that are affected by fraud. We have seen an increase in missing person reports, and that can be broken down to mountain rescue incidents and persons from elsewhere in the country that come to the Skye and Lacalsh area as a missing person. And that's really it for as a kind of a summary of what we've been doing over the last 12 months.
Okay, thanks, Ali. Okay, I'll go to members to see if they've got any questions. Councillor Millen.
Okay, I'll get in before yourself today, so that's good. Thank you. No, just a couple of things, maybe concerns expressed at various community councils that I go to. Your staffing numbers. There's obviously concerns raised about the amount of drugs available on Skye and Raasay. And I suppose the big concern is the number of the number of near misses or the quality of driving, especially by tourists with hired cars and the adored by all motorhomes. I just wondered your thoughts on that, because I know that in the report that we've had from you today, but also a report at headquarters, a police report, I suppose near misses and probably a lot of Skye of people going off the road, there's not really part of your statistics, because there's nobody being hurt, or there's no sort of no further action being needed. So, I think as living in Skye, we see horrific standards of driving, speak to people who are involved in the motor trade, lots of people going off the road which are not part of the thing. So I just wondered your thoughts about how Police Scotland could maybe control the amount of motorhomes. Could it make it stricter for people to have to prove they can actually drive these vehicles before getting them? And the final point really is a bit of a hot potato in Dunvegan. What's happening with the police house in Dunvegan?
Okay, I'll go about the vehicles and such like first, if you don't mind. Yeah, it's when persons hire a vehicle, because generally a lot of these motorhomes are hire vehicles. As long as they've got the class on their driving license, they have every right to then use that vehicle. They obviously pay quite a high insurance for that pleasure as well. And I'm sure that a lot of the drivers don't intentionally get involved in any of these near collisions, and it's basically it's just a lack of awareness, a lack of understanding on the narrowness of a lot of our roads up here in Skye and Raasay. The change in roads as well from 2-lane to single carriageway, and the understanding of passing places. Yeah, there is a lot of education that these hires don't really appreciate. And we have worked in the past with hire companies, introducing pamphlets and make them understand the limitations of our roads. But the point you're addressing is way higher than what I can and do with my officers. We do stop vehicles, we do educate drivers, but you'll appreciate they'll come here for maybe 2-3 days and then they're gone, and then it's just a repeat cycle again with new drivers. So it's a continuation. We do our best, and a new thing that's come, I suppose, the last couple of years is telematics from iPhones, watches, motorbikes now with collision buttons that go automatically notify their helpline. So we're now getting a lot more of these sort of triggers that's causing us a lot of resource time and sometimes undue and unnecessary requirements for us to attend. So the technology's kind of changed this slightly as well. So our resource time and deployment is needed for these things as well now. So which previously might not have been the case. So it's been quite a struggle, and I would also kind of suggest that a lot of from anecdotal information, a lot of sat navs, a lot of drivers are using the sat nav as opposed to the road markings and the actual road signage to dictate their driver behaviour. So we're seeing a lot of drivers driving at maybe slower speeds because the sat nav says it's a slow speed, not necessarily that road condition is that slow. So it's again a lack of understanding and you know, a lot of no fault of themselves if they think they're driving to the law and to the road conditions, but a lot of locals will know otherwise. So yeah, there's a lot of challenges there, and if you want happy, I'll go about Dunvegan. If unless somebody else wants to ask about the road conditions first.
Carry on, Ali.
I think Councillor Gillis has got her hand up.
Well, I'll let you. We'll let you answer Drew's question, then we'll go to Councillor Gillis.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so Dunvegan, yes, I still have an officer dedicated at Dunvegan. It's still an active police station. We are looking to redeploy, and we are working with the local community in identifying a location for a new station at Dunvegan. But I'm happy to say that I am not aware of the Dunvegan station closing permanently.
Councillor Gillis.
Hello. Thank you for the report. Really, I mean, it's lovely that you're retiring, but you've been really helpful and you'll be missed.
Thank you.
I'll start with that. One of the main ones is that the community councils meetings that I've attended have really appreciated when police officers have been there, and it has increased since I started, which is only a year ago, but it has been really appreciated. But one of the main queries we have had is just the number of officers around. I think it's just that feeling that you are quite thin on the ground. I think that's generally acknowledged. But it's also the number of incidents that are happening, and people feel that they don't want to be bothering you with the lower level things. And I was just kind of wondering what your thoughts are on something like that.
Yeah, thank you. We staffing numbers have always been a challenge in my time here, and it doesn't get any better. But it's relative, because you know, you can ask anywhere else in the country and they're going to say the same, that they don't have the same staff numbers as they would want. So Skye is not unique. It just maybe feels that way because of the remoteness of where we are. But my complement of officers has been the same. It's just the challenges I have is the management of staff. Sometimes, you know, people understandably go off sick, folk go on training courses, annual leave, you know, all these different aspects, and so that does have an impact on my staffing numbers. But to where we do see these challenges, I do get support. Officers, you know, who rest days might come, they come in for some overtime. We get assistance from other parts of the division. They come in to support us as well. So it's a constant check in that we do have the staff for the area. So it's not something that we will you know, might not, we are on that all the time. But yeah, I do accept that it would be nice to have more staff.
Okay. Alistair, I suppose I mean, you're coming to the end of your career with Police Scotland, so I can probably ask you this question now. I mean, I think the points that have been made by some members this morning is maybe the visibility of police in our local area. I think communities and community councils will say, you know, it's nothing like it used to be. And of course, there are people who have different opinions about the move to Police Scotland as opposed to Northern Constabulary, etc., etc. And certainly, from my perspective, I don't think it's worked. I think that local, that local accountability and that local contact, you know, has gone. I mean, I'm not expecting you to criticise Police Scotland, but from your experience, you, as you've already mentioned this morning, some of the things that are impacting what you have to deal with. And we know from statistics that a lot of police time is now spent dealing with what would probably once been called NHS or other agency stuff, you know, in terms of vulnerable people. You've just mentioned there how technology impacts what you do. If a car has a wee bump and something is alerted, you have to go out because you don't know the severity. So policing has definitely changed. But I think people's perception of policing locally has also changed. And I think, as Chrissy said, sometimes people feel, well, I'm not going to contact the police because they'll not have the resource, they'll not be able to do A, B, or C. And I suppose Drew's point earlier about, you know, drugs, you know, the community, you know, the concerns people have around about that. So the question is that related to all the other pressures police now have on their books, as opposed to what maybe was quite clear one time what a policing incident was? And I suppose that whole issue around about recruitment. In terms of recruitment, you could have, say, 20 officers, but for various reasons, through ill health or time out or whatever, you might only have half that number available on a particular day. So it's really that policing has changed. And do you feel that in your time as a police officer, which is many decades, that policing has changed? I'm not going to ask you for the better or for the worse, but what do you think are the biggest changes that we've seen in policing over the years and the challenges we now face?
Oh, you know, it's to be honest, and I am an honest person, is that one of the first things that people talk about is that it was always better, you know, back in the day. It was always better back in the day. Even when I joined, it was always better back 20 years before that. So it's just one of those constants. But and also it's a common theme about we had 10 officers back then, now we've only got 4. So numbers has always been a factor in policing, and we've always wanted more. But then 30 years ago, we didn't have the internet, mobile phones, the demand and all that, and people are now quicker, and you know that ability to contact the police at an earlier time has had a massive impact. That's probably one of the biggest things I've noticed in my time is the ability to people to contact the police, and also the demand on the police is they want us yesterday. You know, so it's there is that, and also technology is you know, has been massive in that aspect. So yeah, and also I would also agree with working with partners in respect of mental health calls, and more the demand put on police as opposed to other agencies whose primary role is probably more suited for that type of incident. But we are the go-to catch-all agency that's there, and we sometimes have difficulty saying no, and that might be because we have a duty of care that's involved, and because we're a 24/7 service, you know, we do get impacted a lot where it's not really our primary sort of role, and it's quite disappointing because although we all joined to protect people and serve our community, we all want to catch the bad guys. You know, that's what we wanted to do. That's what we wanted to join the police for, and sometimes that's kind of lower in our priorities.
And okay, I suppose Drew's question about catching the bad guys, very clearly, I mean, there are still concerns in our communities about the availability of, you know, of drugs, and it's, you know, but that's right across society. But I suppose it's trying to understand locally how you feel you're able to deal with the drug issues that people are reporting in some other communities.
Well, yeah, totally, and I would always encourage people to report through 101 or 999 if it's ongoing, or contact us online through Police Scotland or Crime Stoppers of any sort of criminality that they come across. Now, I totally understand where people might think I'm just going to call the police and then I hear nothing about it coming back. Sometimes it you know, if they're not a victim of a crime but they're reporting criminal behaviour, then they might think that nothing's been done about it. We have to build up an intelligence picture. So that might take 2 or 3 separate sources to provide that intelligence picture of an individual who's involved in some form of criminality. Now, and once we get, because we can't just act on information of one person alone, because it could be malicious, it could be unsubstantiated, it might even be criminal. So we need to kind of identify that there is an activity going on, and once we have that picture built up, well, then we can go through and apply. If it's a say drugs activity and there's drugs that have been dealt with at a particular location, we then present that to the procurator fiscal, and the procurator fiscal, if they agree, then we go towards the sheriff, and then we apply for a warrant, and then that gives us the opportunity to then go through that property and identify whatever comes our way. Now, we talked there about Northern Constabulary and then now Police Scotland. Now that we are part of Police Scotland, we've got the opportunity of having resources from across the country to help us, who are specialist departments. So we get the assistance of the Operation Support Unit, who are search trained, but also able to force properties, and then we can get the dog unit if we need be as well. So and these we can have all this additional resources that's not taking the burden of day-to-day policing. So we can have these pre-arranged, these pre-planned operations that do target individuals, that do disrupt activity, but then on the other side, it then helps the community longer term and see that. But these sort of situations, thankfully, are very rare on Skye, but we do look into them, and we have been successful this year already. So, and it's not something that we ignore, as I'd just like to kind of highlight again.
Thanks. I suppose, I think what you've articulated there is the length of time, maybe, and then the number of, I suppose, loopholes that or steps that need to be taken. When we watch Highland Cops, you think it's, well, there's a drug problem and then the guys just go out. But now, as you've articulated, it does take time, and it does take procedure to move to that that final stage. And I'm not going to get started on 101, Ali, and the time it takes for that to be response, because that's not one of your concerns. But I think there is maybe a frustration within the public domain about the time sometimes 101 take to answer a call. But Drew, I'll go back to you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, for letting me back in. Yeah, I think it would be useful before you finish, Inspector, I enjoyed listening to what you're saying there. I understand how you describe various things. I think, in my opinion, community councils haven't quite moved on to your present sort of operations, and they expect still policemen to turn up in community councils and whatever. General public still expect to walk into the police station anytime, and so I think it would be useful, even if you sent it to ourselves as local members, but even could contact the community councils and explain how things actually operate nowadays. That the police station in Portree is, for example, not open to the public to walk in and out as they used to be able to do 20 years ago. And I think just need some clarity on how, because I don't want to go into the 101 situation either, but it's quite difficult, at the Portree police station. I've seen somebody there, it's a while ago now, but pressing the button, and they couldn't even make out what the person was saying because it was somewhere else. It wasn't in Portree. I don't know how it works, but I think it would be good to get an explanation of actually how the police service works on Skye and Raasay. Just a short email to every community council saying this is how we do things nowadays. I think that would be a help. And I just want, finally, I should have said at the beginning, congratulations on your service as well, and I hope you have a long and happy retirement. It's going to be a bit scary to have two Bottocks retired now after the Shinty matches. But I hope that you've enjoyed your final few years on Skye, and
Thank you.
I hope that the next inspector will be as Highland-minded as yourself, as you have been. So just
Thank you.
a long and happy retirement to you, and thanks for the report.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, so Ali, you've got a final task.
I have.
It might be, I think it's probably best maybe sent to Willie McKinnon, and Willie can then circulate to Community Council and to members. And I think it's a good point, Drew. It's just for communities to understand the different approaches to policing, the different pressures, and locally, what is the best way to contact and get a response from officers. So that would be your final task, Ali.
Okay, thank you. No, I've got, community councils is obviously the lifeblood of the areas. They obviously serve a really good local focal purpose. And I have been to several community council meetings in areas, and in fact, it's Broadford this evening, and I'm planning on going down to that one. So I'm totally aware of the need that we have to kind of, there's the want, and then there's the actual need, and it's fitting that with everything else that's involved with us, and I'd love us to go to all the community council meetings, but it's just not always possible. But yeah, I'm quite happy to kind of pass on some information to them so they're aware of where we are going forward.
Okay. So once again, then, on behalf of us all, can we thank you for your service? Can we wish you a happy retirement?
Thank you.
And I will see you tonight, probably in Broadford. So thank you very much, Ali.
No worries. Right, take care. Cheers now. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, members, moving on, as we've done at the last few area committees, just so we get a flavour of what's happening in our communities and the strong partnership working that takes between community companies and development trusts in partnership with the council and other agencies. I'm delighted that we've got Sleat Community Development Trust with us at this area committee, and we've got Donnie MacDonald with us, who's going to talk to us about some of the work that's happening in Sleat with Community Development Trust. So just checking you're there, Donnie.
Yes, I'm here, Chair.
Your cameras, I think, off, Donnie.
Camera off, Shug.
Lima. Okay,
Good.
so over to you, Donnie.
Now, Chair, we sent a slide to show at this point.
Okay, Alistair, have you got the PowerPoint?
I do, Chair. Yeah. So if you just give me a moment, and I'll bring it onto the screen.
Okay, so just hand fire, Donnie.
We thought we'd do that. Just there's a lot to cover, and it's easier just to get the edited highlights in the 10 minutes or so.
Okay, fine. Right, Alistair's on it.
While Alistair's on it, just a wee bit of the background. We were established just over 20 years ago, really to try and bring a much more focus to the various sustainability, economics, environmental, social welfare things down in Sleat. We were very concerned at that time that things were starting to slip away, and opportunities that we saw that were critical to the communities looked as though they may not exist in the not too distant future. When you look at the map, and this is a map of the Sleat Peninsula, and the main assets we have in the trust are the Armadale store and garage. Now, that was at one point something we thought we might lose, and critical to the local community is the garage and the filling station there. And so part of the initial efforts of the trust was to secure that garage and ultimately the store for the future of the communities. And that was all ultimately successfully achieved initially in as early as 2007. And having the local garage, having the local filling station, if it's not in Armadale, we have to drive up to Broadford to get the fuel. So it's turned out to be very good. We've had some iterations on the store, and in 2021, we opened the new store by the garage, which has gone from success to success, and has been awarded a number of awards for Independent Grocer Scotland in the last few years. So I don't know if any of you have been down to the Sleat store, but we're very proud of what we have there. And the other key asset is the Tormore Community Woodland. Initially, this was taken on primarily for the financial opportunity. It offered the trust and the community. There was a way to create some funding locally for activities down in Sleat, and we successfully acquired that back, I think it was 2011. Initial efforts around there was all about the harvesting. It was an opportunity we saw because of the relative isolation of that forest at the time. The Forestry Commission weren't sure what the devil they would do with it. And we took the opportunity. We've done most of the harvesting. We've got one plot left to harvest, but we've really been moving that woodland from commercial woodland more to sustainable biodiversity focus. We're proud of the pair of sea eagles that live in the woodland there, and through a strong group of tireless volunteers, and it is all volunteer work, we're turning that more towards the biodiversity, opening up woodland walks in the hill, just a number of activities, and obviously replanting of local deciduous trees. So, but it is the volunteers, as it is with all the trusts, that there does become a bit of volunteer burnout. So, and trying to bring in younger people into the trust, into those activities, has been one of our challenges, and I think it's a challenge for everyone. We had another part of the trust is, looking for new opportunities. And while we didn't believe that we really wanted to buy the whole of the Clandonald Land Trust estate last year, we did have to do a community due diligence on the asset to make sure we understood what was going. Obviously, a lot of us locally knew the clan as we knew it very well. And all the issues it's had over the years. But for the community, we had to go through, we felt, this community due diligence, so we understood the asset, what we may or may not have been able to do. Everything to do there required a very significant price tag. It has been sold. It has been sold to an individual family who've had the estate now for about 3 months. They have a general manager in place. They've started hiring, focusing on hiring some local staff back into the organisation, which we really appreciate. And certainly the noises we've been getting from the Armadale. They want to work with the community. They want to see this more as a legacy asset to them rather than a commercial asset. We'll give them another 6 months or so to get their feet securely under the table and have some kind of realistic plan together, and engage more directly with them then. But we've been encouraged with their willingness and desire to interface, not just with the trust, but also with the community council. And we're very pleased within the Sleat Community Trust. We have a few of the Sleat Community Council members as part of the board of the trust. And that allows a very open communication between ourselves. And Andy Williamson, who's the chair, and I meet not infrequently with the head of the crofting community there, so that we feel we've got just about everyone covered in that. Obviously, we have Solmore beside us, we have the new school beside us, and we interface with those two. We act as the finance vehicle for the old single track road between Drumfern and Breckish that's now been created as a public cycle footpath. We were very pleased we got the funding for the initial phase, which is complete, and we're now looking for the final funding for the link piece that will keep the track off of the main road. And we're hopeful that we can get that sometime within the rest of this year. So within all of that, we have lots of other little things. We have, obviously, we're down in Sleat. We have the ferry, or most times we don't have the ferry, so we work with them through the Sound of Sleat ferry users group, and that's built a good relationship with Malik and the Malik surrounds, because it really the ferry on and off situation has been pretty devastating to the local shopping and retail and Airbnb bed and breakfast. That's given us a lot better linkage to the local mainland there. We have things like the community minibus, electric minibus that is very useful. We have a number of people who are living remote, don't have access to a vehicle, so we regularly from our store take supplies to them. People who need to go to the clinic or up to Broadford to the medical centre there, we can take, if they don't have their own transportation or they have transportation issues, we take them in the electric minibus, and that's been a big success. Again, it's all run by volunteers, so it's a continual challenge to make sure we have the volunteers lined up and to meet with the needs of whoever in the community needs the minibus. But it's been successful. Kind of interesting little success has been our Skynet community broadband, originally set up to link places like myself over Nachnachloik and the remoter parts of the peninsula and over in Strath to the internet world. Of course, fibre broadband is up into the communities. But interestingly, there's not been the evacuation from the community broadband that we were initially concerned about. And the great asset of that is when you lift the phone and call someone, a human being answers you. And you know where he lives and he knows where you live. And so you get pretty good service through that. So we're pleased with that. And things like, particularly in the winter and through the summer, we have the community cafes, which again help link people who find it more difficult to get out. Again, we'll use the minibus to bring people to these community cafes if they can't make it themselves. So we have a lot going on. And one of the things that we found through the Armadale sale effort was, gosh, we need someone to help us. And so we started the process of finding funding for a community development officer. You've probably seen in the free press, we finally were successful in that. As to whether we'll actually secure an individual for that, we've got a few candidates put their name forward, so we're very hopeful we have that, because with all the volunteers in the world, having something like a dedicated community development officer, where the funding that we've acquired is for 3 years. We feel that will give us at least a good run to start some of the new projects we have on file, and maybe even to the point that we can make that position self-sustaining. Similarly, in Tormore, we need someone, again, we've got all the volunteers, but we need someone there who's actually executing the plans and making sure the things are happening. We have some groups coming down there. We had one group we had to turn back that could have significantly provided some good funding to us, but we just don't have someone there in the forest all the time that we really would need to have these visitors come. They're very keen to come, plant some trees. I don't know if you've been to Tormore, but the view of the mainland is pretty spectacular. So we'd like to be able to bring more and more of that. We're putting in cycle paths. One of our challenges for this year, and hopefully we still don't have any funding for a ranger, but we're in that process. But we're very hopeful that position will start to pull in the school and the college more into the woodland activities. So kind of hold it. Hopefully we'll be able to report in the not too distant future. We've received some funding for that position, but I think these two full-time positions are key to where we would like to move forward. So that's kind of where we are in the Sleat right now.
Okay, Donny, thank you very much indeed. Alistair, do you want to take down that
Sure.
really helpful slide? And it'd be quite good if you could share it with us, Alistair, after the event.
Yeah.
Okay, so thanks, Donny. I'll kick off first of all here. So I think what's really impressive is that the length of time you have been on the go. And I know when, the whole idea of community trusts and community companies was established, one of the key factors was sustainability and longevity of community companies and community trusts. And you've very clearly shown that that is possible with proper management. And I think from what you've said, what's really strong is that community partnership element that is happening. You mentioned the community council. You've articulated all the key projects and how they're all interlinked. I think it's really important that you've got people on the different bodies so that there is cross-fertilization and communication. So I can only congratulate you on what you've achieved in the 20 years. Very interested about the Armadillo Estates side of things, clearly. And it's good to hear that what you're seeing at this stage is what you think is a positive early engagement with the community and maybe the establishment of what could be a positive relationship. How do you plan to maybe move that forward in terms of some kind of formal setup where you're going to have that regular communication with Armadillo Estate and hopefully them listening to the community on a wider scale? And my other question is, thinking about the community development officer side and the ranger side of things, I think it's fantastic that you're in a position to employ hopefully these two posts. What are your thoughts about, again, the sustainability of these posts going forward? Do you think you're going to be able to fund these on a long-term basis, or is it initial seed funding and then you're going to have to look to meet the shortfall? So these are my questions. We'll go to the other members, Donny, and then you can come back and answer us all.
Okay.
Chrissy, you're next.
Hello, thank you very much for the presentation. That was really interesting. I've been keeping an eye on Sleat since you started, mainly because it was in a nice way, not creepy at all. Just purely from studying through Solmore and looking at community trusts and the massive impact they have on communities and the resilience within communities. And just it's brilliant to see that you are keeping going, that you've got that funding for a development officer, because it is so essential. My question is about your income generation and how you've found support. So what has been your favourite example of income generation project that has worked for you as a trust?
Yeah. Chair, am I answering each as they come along?
We'll go to Drew first, Drew, and then you can come and answer all three of us.
Okay.
Hi, Drew.
If I've forgotten the question by we've gone through Drew, then just remind me as we go along. Yeah. Sorry, Drew.
That's all right. I really don't have much of a question, to be honest. I just wanted to thank you for the presentation, really. And I remember the good old days when you started at the Tormore, and there were a few issues to begin with way back long ago now, and I think you had them resolved. I think the council did help to support you with some investment there. I think remember you were trying to put in some drying plant or something for the wood or whatever. It's a long time ago now. So my memory's not that great, but no, I think it's hugely important that trusts have got they've got an important role to play now in society, and in places like Skye in particular and Raasay, where communities have to I think, do things for themselves nowadays. In fact, throughout the whole of Scotland, I think communities have to do more for themselves. So I suppose the question I would have, and I'm sure you'll have it covered anyway, is the quality of a development officer, because they can create your future, or they can just sit there and let everything stall. So, and you know, sadly, in my experience over the years, as a councillor in Skye, I've seen quite a few development officers come and go, and you know, all they left behind was a filing cabinet full of papers and very little progress. So I hope that, you know, that I hope as local members we can support you going forward with your plans, but also I hope that you'll pick a really progressive person to take forward the projects that you have. I think you've done so well over the last 20 years, and I hope you have a next good 20 years, though I probably won't see them, but I hope that you will certainly be as successful as you have been in the past. And you have been in the shop only the once, mind you, but I can see the difference it makes, and to have a successful shop, grocer shop nowadays, along with a petrol station, it's not an easy thing to have, because there's a lot of competition out there, and it's narrow profit margins, etc. So I think to have a success after this length of time, it just shows you the effort put in by the community. So thank you for your presentation today, and good luck.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Drew. And one of if I could say that maybe one of the positive things of COVID was that the community realised they had such a good asset there. But with regards to the community development officer, what we've been doing in the interim, Drew, is building a list of projects that we think we should bring forward. And that's also included projects we could be doing with the new Armadale estate. And so at the appropriate time, they've asked us, the estate has asked us for our list of projects, and we said, well, we'd like you to, you know, get your feet under the table a wee bit and understand the you know, what you have. Just as an example, there's an old gardening greenhouse area in the estate that's not been used for forever, and we see that as a potential for a community well-being, I don't know, centre, you know, where not just volunteers at the clan of the estate, because, you know, we know that we had that in the past, and that was very successful. And again, for all the varying reasons, cheap labour for the estate, but real good opportunities for well-being and just outdoors and health stuff for the community. So we have a list of those potential projects, so that when we do get the development officer, and we are concerned that we can get the quality of the officer that we required, and we were a bit concerned in the job spec that we put for the individual. There was a bit of conversation, do we put a job spec that will get a development officer, or the job spec that might run that we won't get the development officer, but if we do get one, it will be the one of the caliber that we want. So we went for the latter. Fingers crossed. That's where we go. Christine, I've already forgotten your question, and hopefully you have.
That's okay. No, so what was your an income generation project that the trust has been involved in, and just basically your favourite one? Well,
a nice one is the wee hydro. Perfect. In Tormore, we set up this little hydro scheme, and it has been, thanks to the eternal rain in Sleat, it has turned out to be very successful. And part of the process of that is the funds generated, we then put back beyond any payback to the small company. The funds generated go to community projects. So they've gone back into the Tormore Forest recently for a whole bunch of equipment. We've supported the school, we've supported the choir. So, you know, and we have a process 4 times a year. We go out to the community, say, you're looking for any funding. They know the kind of scale of things we're talking about, usually between £3,000 is kind of the top we go to, but that goes a long way at the right time. So, and so the community knows that that's coming. So the school is always preparing itself for something that we might fund, and there's always one of the shinty teams or whatever going someplace. So that's been a nice success. Chair.
Yeah, Andy. So my question was roundabout, and I think you've kind of answered it. That relationship with Armadillo State, and you know how you're going to move that forward. You know, in a regular and partnership type forum, and I think you've said that is definitely the case. And the other one was about the 2 posts that you're advertising for. It was the sustainability of financing these posts going forward.
Well, the community development position, part of the script for that position was the objective is that individual will become self-sustaining by the end of the 3 years. We think we have some projects on our list that can be achieved in that time frame that will lead towards that. So for the woodland position, it's a harder one, but the attraction that we're seeing for tour groups wanting to come to the forest, wanting to plant trees for us, you know, wanting to do that and provide some funding. You know, if we can embrace that more, I think we could get there. But certainly the community development officer, that is focused on self-sustaining, and they would work obviously very closely with whoever's executing the forest plan. We do have a forest plan, as I think you know, we do have a local place plan. So everything we do is in the context of those, you know, so we're not thinking up new ideas insofar as if we think of an idea, we have to see how it fits into the local place plan, and that has been very helpful. So watch,
Donny. Yeah, sorry, carry on, Donny.
No, I was just saying, so watch this space, and we might come calling for some funding too. So
yeah, well, I mean, I think we have been involved in supporting most community trusts across the island with community regeneration funding, and that would still be our ambition, because categorically, I mean, it needs to be a partnership approach. And as Drew has said, increasingly, you know, funding through public bodies is becoming harder to get. So the whole community aspect of things is something that we need to promote, and we need to work in partnership. And you've clearly showed at a local level that partnership works. And we would certainly hope that at a wider council level and at a Skye area committee level, that partnership is strong too.
Yeah, good.
Okay, so Donny, once again, thank you very much. I mean, I do go to Sleat quite on a regular basis. I did see that the Drumfern to Breckish footpath, being a Schoolamus man myself, it's probably Drumfern to Schoolamus, I would be calling it, but there again, you'll maybe get to Breckish at some stage as well. Okay, thanks, Donny, right. Much appreciated.
Right.
Okay, Alistair, I think we're just going to stick to the agenda as was. I mean, there was talk of changing the agenda. And also, have we heard any news from Councillor Stewart about whether he's an apology or whether he's appearing or not?
No, Chair.
No, Chair. Okay.
Why would he bother? Why would he bother coming to our ward?
Okay, I'll move on then to community regeneration funding application. Marianne, I think Marianne's with us. Thanks, Marianne. So we've just got the one application today, one that we know has been in the pipeline for some time, and a lot of discussion and engagement has taken place. And we'd ask to, if we agree or otherwise, the grant award. But you can give us a wee bit of background information, Marianne, and then we'll make a decision.
Thank you and good morning all. Nice to see you. Yes, it's just one application today from the Portree Community Centre Association. You will have seen the application form and the RAG summary spreadsheet with the results of the assessment we carried out in the team. Just a wee reminder, I know you're familiar with the process, but when we carry out the RAG assessments, we obviously rely on information that has been provided to us by the applicant. And where a project's been awarded red or amber against any of the criteria, it doesn't reflect an eligibility issue, but it just flags up there might be outstanding concerns or maybe brief information provided. So we would just address that with potentially additional conditions to any funding award made. In terms of the application today, it is reference CRF 4242. As I said, presented from the Community Centre Association, but it is very much a partnership project between the Centre Association, the Portree Amateur Drama Society, and the Portree Panto group as well. The project itself is to look at installing lighting and sound equipment into the community centre. It will allow them to have, obviously, at the moment, the performances that they quite often have to hire out equipment, so it comes at a cost. Equipment sometimes coming from off island as well, so this equipment will allow them to have that in-house. The application itself was well developed, well presented and clear. The applicant has thought of training, long-term maintenance, and it will give them additional fundraising capacity as well for the long-term sustainability of the centre. The funding request is £39,493.16. Should members be minded to approve the award today, there is currently sufficient funding available, so there are no resource implications. So if you have any questions about the assessment or the project itself, please let me know.
Okay, I think this is one that we know very well, and certainly I think I'm certainly minded to approve the awards. So I'll just check with other members. I'll go to Councillor Miller first, who's maybe closer to things than I am.
Yeah. Do you mean I was a thespian in a past life? Is that maybe what you're saying? I think it's a good application. I think it's something that's badly needed. When you get so many visiting performers as well, they're expecting high quality lighting and high quality sound. So I would fully support this. And the pantomime group have been putting on sterling performances for quite a few years now, and I think the whole community is certainly well behind them, and so this would improve and enhance the performance for the pantomime group. But there's also going to improve the facility of the community centre, which I think, to be fair, the committee are working very hard to turn it into a really good venue, which is badly needed in a growing town like Portree and a growing population on the island. So fully support it, and I think it's also good to see that they're actually going to train people to be able to operate and to maintain the facility as much as possible. So I think that's something that also takes the strain off the one or two volunteers who at the moment are sort of leading the charge to make things better. So yeah, fully support it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gillis.
Yeah, it's a really nice application to read, and just nice to see that there's that collaboration between organisations and groups to be bringing something forward that is genuinely looking at the resilience within what they're doing and trying to train people up and keeping it within the community. It's a nice way of getting new people involved in organisations like this as well, and potentially involve young people as well who have got an interest in that kind of tech side of things behind the scenes. Not everybody wants to be on the stage, so it's a really nice project.
Okay, Marianne, I think you're hearing everyone's happy to approve this grant of £39,493.16, and I think we just move forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, members, moving on to item 6, Portree mobility hubs, and I believe we've got David Swanson with us today to give us a brief introduction to the report. So we'll hand over to you, David.
Good morning, morning, Councillor Phillipson, morning, members. Thank you very much for your time, as always. I'll try to keep this relatively brief. It's quite a short report, really, at the moment, just to kind of give you some background on what we're looking at. So, the need for a mobility hub or mobility hubs in Portree was identified as part of the Portree Active Travel Master Plan work and the Portree Parking Study before that. Really influenced by a number of things. So some of the proposed developments within the master plan, for example, looking at improvements around Wentworth Street, Summerlid Square, and around the harbour. All of those would require some reduction in parking capacity within the town centre itself, and obviously being conscious of the ongoing Link Road development and the new housing developments that will enable, also likely to increase demand for parking and access within Portree town centre. We then identified a sum of money that had been allocated towards mobility hubs within the council's UK Shared Prosperity Fund allocation, and were successful in securing that to look at Portree at a very high level initially, really just as a kind of desktop study to do some high level analysis. So what we've really done initially is assessed some of the key baseline data, so looking at things like existing traffic counts within the town centre, existing parking capacity and usage within the town centre, various other areas around journey times, current housing requirements, demographics, etc., and develop sort of 3 key indicators to assess any sort of potential site for a future hub. The intention obviously being that in particular visitors to the town would essentially park up at a location. Sorry, I realise we use this term mobility hubs and I haven't actually explained what that is. Yeah, essentially encouraging people to park up outside of the town centre and make their way into the town, either, for example, by active travel or, for example, through provision of short shuttle bus services, for example, essentially trying to reduce traffic through the town centre itself. We've then developed 3 indicators for any sort of site. So these actually cover a whole range of about 14 different sub-indicators, but just to give the broad examples, so transport connectivity as the top one, how accessible is any given site by active travel, so can it be walked to, cycled from, how accessible is it to the major road network, how easy is it for larger vehicles, buses, coaches, HGVs to access, etc. Parking capacity, this is relatively straightforward. How able is any potential site to accommodate the identified parking requirements, and how able is it to accommodate any potential future expansions should we need to expand that capacity in future. And last but by no means least, site deliverability and cost. So obviously this is something which has to be constructed. A key part of assessing any site is how complex would that construction be and how much would it cost. So that looks at things like flood risk, connection to existing utilities, complexity of connection to the roads network, etc. What we really identified is that there would be a requirement for any sort of site to have 160 parking spaces. That is effectively doubling the number of parking spaces that would be removed from the town centre if all of the identified actions within the master plan were to go ahead. So obviously accounting for removal of existing parking capacity, but also some future demand, rather, stimulated by, for example, new housing developments. We would also want space for bus stances, cycle parking, etc. And what that really boils down to is that it would need a space about 6,000 square metres. We did some long listing of all available potential sites in and around Portree. Long listed 13 initial candidate sites, and then shortlisted that down to 8 sites based on some very initial filtering. Some areas, for example, had very obviously poor contours. For example, there's no point trying to build a mobility hub on the side of a hill. So taking that down to 8 sites, and you will see on, and apologies, I've lost my copy of the report. Under item 6.5 on the report, we've mapped those potential sites out for members. One thing I should note, you'll see there's a large variation in the size of land parcels that have been identified. For the larger parcels, it would not be proposed to use all of that. That's simply how they shape out as initially mapped. We would be looking to use looking at sites, for example, 14 and 15 in particular. It would be proposing to use some of those sites, not all. Really, then we took those 8 sites and scored them against those criteria that were identified. And again, members will see that is presented, the scoring there, under item 6.6 in the report. So you see that no site scored perfectly on all indicators, which we wouldn't expect. But having gone through that process, looked at each of those 14 potential indicators under the 3 headings, we identified 2 fairly obvious and high scoring items from the assessment. So the first of these, and the item which scored highest, would be actually to use the existing parking capacity at the high school when it is not required for use during term time. That comes with an obvious caveat, which is that capacity is used for a lot of the year, and therefore there would be a requirement to parcel that effectively with some other site. And the site that scored highest, and you'll see, is item parcel 14, which we've identified with the title adjacent to proposed Tesco. I realise that's not a very scientific measure, but hopefully gives an idea of where it is. Really, all we're asking members at the moment is, I suppose, one, your feedback. This is a very high-level exercise. As I say, it's been carried out on a desktop basis. We're aware that has its limitations. It would be welcome to hear any feedback from members, quantitative or qualitative, on how you feel about those 2 sites that have been provisionally identified, and really seeking your agreement that we take the results of this and we undertake some further investigation. Really, the next steps would be to look more in depth at those first 2 sites which have been identified. Although I would note that I've also tentatively identified site option number 1, which is right at the very entrance to Portree along the A87, opposite where the candle company is. That again is based on it scored relatively highly. It wasn't one of the highest scoring sites, but there's something about the location of that site that makes sense to me, that doesn't quite get captured in a way that some of those criteria do. It feels right. It's right where people enter Portree. It's across from what's already quite a popular destination in itself, and it also ties into some of the proposed active travel actions we have along the 87 as well. So for those reasons, I'd provisionally like to explore that site as well. What that would really entail at this point, sorry.
Yeah, okay, David, I think, I mean, I'm conscious of the time, and I think we've got the report in front of us. But I think our frustration is, and you keep mentioning this is high level, it's gathering statistics, I suppose it's the lack of progress. I mean, okay, we're asked to agree at this stage that officers should further explore the deliverability of these options. Well, clearly we're going to agree to that, but it's just the length of time everything seems to be taken. And and very clearly we're conscious of your role in terms of developing active and sustainable projects on Skye and Raasay, and we're a year into that project. So I suppose it's how quickly can we now begin to get things moving actually on the ground, as opposed to continual looking at statistics, continue looking at desktop stuff. Let's see how we can start moving this forward. I think as members we agree that something needs to be done. You've mentioned the 3 sites there, including the one outside Portree near Skye Candles. Let's get things moving is really what I think we're saying, because we need to understand to SAF, the Skye and Raasay future. So we need to be seeing where are we in terms of applying for funding? Where are we applying for funding? What is the progress with that? Because it's all very well having ambition and desktop stuff, but if we haven't got deliverability options in front of us, what is the point of that exercise? So that's really my point. I'll go to Drew next, and then you can come back, David.
Yeah, thanks for the report, David. I'm sorry, I am totally confused. Okay. I don't understand your map at all. I just can't see where these areas you're identifying would be. I mean, the one that you're saying that you would like to investigate, I don't know where that is. I can't really visualize an empty piece of ground there at all. So maybe it's me, but I've only lived here for, well, a while. So I don't know. I don't understand that one. On the map 14, 15 and 13, I don't see how they would be suitable. I would hate to prejudge that planning application for Tesco would be approved. So I think we have to be careful how we're describing that area. And I obviously wrongly, perhaps, I assumed all that land was designated for housing. And so therefore, the other one I'm confused with is one which I thought might have been rated highly, though it's not it's owned by, I believe, by the co-op, is the land beside the co-op, which is a considerable piece of ground. Yeah. It was a former builder's yard, etc. It has existing access onto the A87, and I don't think that seems to have got a very high rating according to the report. So what I would really like to see, while I agree with what the chairman had said, almost 100% agree with what he said there, want to see this moving forward, I would really like to perhaps meet up with you one-to-one and face-to-face and have a look at some of these sites on the ground, and let's see what we could do. I mean, I don't have long left on this council, and I would like to certainly see something done to improve the parking and the mobility situation around Portree, and the link road, yes, will contribute greatly to that. But the amount of traffic pouring into Portree just now, we do need to come up with some alternatives. So I would certainly welcome a walk around Portree with you, or a drive around even might be better, just to identify some of these things on the map, because I don't understand. I can't really identify really where you're suggesting on the map. The map's not very good quality, obviously, and but I would just like some clarity on that. But obviously, what John said there, Chairman, fully support this being moved forward, but move forward as quickly as possible. And so I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, and well, I think David's coming to an area business meeting, so David, we need to discuss that there. And I mean, I also see a land adjacent to Portree Primary School, a large site west. Well, and I was a head teacher in Portree Primary School for 17 years, and I'm not aware of any large site adjacent to Portree Primary School.
There's none.
So
There's
No,
none there. There's nothing.
no,
unless you
no.
unless you do the King George V, turn it into a car park.
Okay.
But we don't
Chrissy,
own that.
So I'm clearly the unusual one, because I do understand all of the locations you've got in that map, and I get where they are. The one beside Skye Candles is where the horses used to be grazed through. It's that bit just down at the bottom there, beside where the new burial's been put in. So I get what you're talking about there. I'm assuming the Portree Primary School is actually Boonskull for Sleat, which is the Gaelic primary school, which is different because we've got two in Portree. There's clearly urgent need for development here, and I understand the need to take our time and properly investigate everything that's going on. I do find it interesting that the ground by the burial ground, or Skye Candles, however you want to identify it, is marked red in the rag chart, which for walking, public transport and access to residential populations. And I think that's one of the key things to really consider here is it's not just people driving into Portree, it's the residents of Portree as well. So that does need to be highlighted. The areas up by Tesco and by the school, again, they do make sense. That's where buses are coming into right now already and things like that. So it would be really good, and I look forward to hearing about how this is going to progress and how we're actually going to bring this forward. My main question is, at what stage are the community getting involved in this and discussions, and to get feedback from them about what's happening?
okay, David, you want to come back?
Yeah, absolutely. So taking points really in order. Okay, absolutely take on board that this is a priority and completely appreciate the need to move this forward. As noted, members, I'll be coming to an area business meeting. I believe it is at the end of this month. Sorry, I had the date just today. I can look to take some form of update report to you at that meeting, doing some very initial work, as proposed in this, taking some of those initial concerns on board, speaking to some colleagues on the ground, and trying to get some more detail about those proposed sites to you. If obviously moving on to Councillor Miller, at your point, absolutely more than happy to come down and have a walk around, drive around, however you feel it would be best. That is exactly one of the things that we are looking to do to try and progress this piece of work, is to do that on the ground, looking at the site. So more than happy to do that with you, and again can look at doing that within the next 1-2 weeks, as quickly as you're available. Really, I can make myself available for that.
Yep.
In terms of community involvement, it's a very good question. We absolutely need to have community involvement in this. That it's important that the community has their say. It's important that the community has the ability to input as well. I think I would like to have 3 or 4, a shortlist perhaps even further down to those 3 or 4 proposed sites rather than 8 or 9. I think that becomes difficult often when consulting or engaging with communities. Let's do some of the more practical work. We need feedback from, for example, roads colleagues. I need to sit down with our roads colleagues and say, in principle, if you were looking at this, developing this site, connecting it onto the roads network, how feasible would you find it? What are the difficulties? It may well be that there are sites that we feel are good, that people with the practical experience and knowledge would tell us actually would be extremely difficult to develop for reasons that maybe can't be foreseen. So I'd like to undertake that work first. But absolutely following that, it would be good to get this out to communities for their view as well. Sorry, that's a slight non-answer to your question, I realise.
Okay, David, I think, the recommendation is that members are asked to agree at this stage that should further explore the deliverability. Well, that is a priority, and very clearly, before you come to the area committee, I think that a meeting with Drew around Portree, clearly there has to be engagement with roads, which I would have hoped would have happened already. So if we're going to progress this, we need to get, we need to get our ducks in a row and in the right order so that we can move this forward. And hopefully when you come to the area business meeting at the end of the month, we'll have a clearer idea of the direction of travel and of what the recommendations are. Finally, Drew.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I'm sorry. Yeah, because the access to the site, first of all, you're saying site 1. I mean, I don't know how you would get access to that unless you went through the burial car park. The one up at the school, yes, John was right. If it's the Boonskull Gaelic, which I can see it is, I just don't understand how you get access to that ground, which I believe is common grazing, owned by whoever. So that's what's really confusing me, is how these sites were identified. If they were identified by desktop, then I can understand why. But if you walk the ground, you would probably very quickly move them away. I think the ones up towards what we call the home farm would certainly be accessible to the new link road. And as I said, the one beside the co-op is already accessible to the A87. It's the question, I suppose, about land availability then. So I think if you're happy to come and meet, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, David, thank you very much. So we agree absolutely to the recommendation. Let's get this moving forward. Let's get it moving forward at a pace, and let's get clarity. And we'll be able to get that by your engagement with Councillor Miller locally, and also when you see the ground, when you actually see where these places are, the ground. So thanks, David, and we look forward to seeing you at the area business meeting. And Drew looks forward to meeting you before then.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Alistair, is Margaret with us? We were hoping to do housing performance report, or we can move on and take environmental health report first if you want.
Yeah, she's not in the meeting at the moment, Chair.
Okay, we'll move on, members, to item 8, environmental health annual report, and Daniel Hopwood is with us. We haven't met Daniel before, so Daniel, if you want to introduce yourself and what your role is, and then give us a quick summary of the report.
Thank you, Chair. As you say, I'm Daniel Hopwood. I am here instead of Coyle Hunter, who is the local local manager on Skye, the local senior environmental health officer on Skye. Unfortunately, she's off at the moment, so I'm stepping in to cover. I'm one of 2 area managers that exist within environmental health. But if I can just beg your patience, I have some slides, and I can just go into a little bit more detail on our structure once I share those. If you just bear with me for a moment, I'll just pop those up. Sorry, the computer is on a tiny little bit of a go slow just now, but hopefully they should be coming through. Fingers crossed. Are we seeing those? Yep, grand. Okay, perfect. Just very quickly, I know that I think probably everybody in this call has had us do one of these reports before, but we're just basically going to provide you some feedback on the work that we've done in the area over the last financial year. I will just draw attention to the fact that the work that we do is linked to our performance and strategic plan. A new version of that plan was agreed at the Community in Place Committee on the 21st of May. In particular, it's noteworthy that this plan is now a 3-year plan rather than an annual plan. As a service, we decided that we would stretch this to 3 years to better align with the other sort of national plans that we have. So the Joint Health Protection Plan, the work done by the HSE and others. It also allows us a little bit more strategic thinking, allows us to look to how we resource the work. I mentioned at the beginning that I'm one of the 2 area managers. So within the last probably 10 months, environmental health has gone through a restructure. We've gone from having 3 operational areas, of which Skye and Raasay was in our west team along with Loch Arbour. We now have 2 operational areas, north and south, with a single strategic lead officer. Those 2 operational areas, north and south, have a area environmental health manager. I'm the area environmental health manager for the north team, which includes this area, and my colleague Gregor McCormick is my equivalent in the south area. The biggest change, I suppose, for Skye and Raasay is that there is now a manager, an environmental health manager, based in the office in Portree. So we now have a senior environmental health officer in there. We have 1 EHO with 1 vacant EHO post, 2 short-term let officers and a private water supply officer. There's full details of the team structure, including contact details for local officers, in Appendix 1 to my report. As I hope members will be aware, environmental health carry out a wide range of duties, and I'm not going to bore you with the full range of that just now. If you're interested, there's a full list of the types of requests that environmental health get in Appendix 2 to the report. Generally speaking, we split our work into proactive and reactive work, and any work that we do is done in accordance with our enforcement policy. So in the first instance, we attempt to engage with businesses, explain, encourage, and then finally enforce. What I will say is that for serious offences, for serious issues, we sort of skip the first 3 if that's appropriate, and we'll just go straight to enforcement action. So it's not like you have to ratchet through all of those for, as I say, for serious cases, we do go to enforcement. And I have a slide a little bit later on that will split out the advice and information that we've been giving. So I've basically just covered that one. So we'll just move on. If we have a look at the breakdown of the detailed work between this year and last year, obviously I'm aware members have had the report and will have seen this. I will just draw attention to 2 points. The first one is the reduction in the number of short-term let consultations. As you'll be aware, environmental health is a statutory consultee to short-term let licensing. We carry out desk-based and on-site inspections of all short-term let applications and renewals. You'll also be aware that the licenses run for 3 years, therefore there is a cyclic nature to the renewals, and we are just about to start an uptick in those renewals. So whilst the numbers were down for last year, I'm expecting them to rise again for this year. The other, the other point I will just make is with regards to abandoned vehicles. We'll notice that the number there has gone from 28 last year to 48 reports of abandoned vehicles. This is potentially down to both a potential increase in the number of abandoned vehicles, but also a change in the manner in which we record abandoned vehicles. Previously, a single recording of an abandoned vehicle on our database could have related to 1, 2, 3, or sometimes more abandoned vehicles. What we now do is each individual report relates to 1 vehicle, so that could be slightly inflating those figures. If we just have a quick look at some of the outcomes for our reactive work, you can see that the vast majority of the work that we do is through that engagement and education that we do to try and bring people along with us on that journey. We find that we get much better long-term compliance through bringing people with us on the journey to compliance through education and advice. However, as I have already mentioned, we will take formal action as appropriate, and I have some detail on that coming up in a couple of slides' time. Looking at the proactive work, as you can see, we've carried out a wide range of proactive work. I'm not going to go into detail here again. Members have had the report and can see the details for themselves. What I will say is that it's worth just pointing out that as a long-standing position is that We don't tend to do a huge amount of proactive health and safety inspections, which is why the numbers that there are quite low. This is based on UK government and HSE guidance as to what inspections we can and can't do. We are looking as part of our 3-year strategy at a programmed intervention, picking on high priority, high risk areas. So I'm hopeful that that number will increase this year and going forward. Turning very quickly to formal enforcement action, as I mentioned, we do try and engage and educate where we can, but we do go for formal action where that is appropriate. And you can see there on the screen a range of health and safety and food safety notices that have been served. The shellfish temporary closure notices are notices that we issue for shellfish harvesting areas when they're out with their classifications. Turning very briefly to some local matters, and there is more detail of these in the report. We do find that an inordinate amount of time is spent on consulting on planning applications. This is a key part of the work that we do, because it's much better for us to deal with potential nuisance or other issues from noise, light, etc. on paper before stuff is actually built. And the work that the officers are doing ranges from very large scale infrastructure projects to smaller scale but still significant projects, as it says there, schools, distillery renewals, and also quite interestingly, as I've noticed myself in the last couple of weeks, an uptick certainly for me in the number of sauna applications, whether they are mobile or temporary or linked to existing businesses. As we are all painfully aware, Skye has more than its fair share of short-term lets, and I'm mindful that the item prior to mine, which I caught some of, was obviously talking about the traffic and the various other issues. Short-term lets do take up quite a significant percentage of the work, as I've already discussed, and officers have been involved in Skye Live this year. Turning just briefly to Highland-wide matters, stuff that's up and coming. You may be aware that there is legislation coming in requiring the licensing of non-surgical procedures. This will fall to the Highland Council and Environmental Health to take forward. As it says there, the legislation was approved in February 2026. It will be mandatory by September 2027. The biggest issue we're going to have here is finding these businesses. A lot of these businesses tend to operate on Facebook or by word of mouth. We're aware for work that's been done, certainly in other areas of Highland, there are more of these than we would expect. Additionally, we've got potentially more licensing activities that are going to be processed by Environmental Health. There's been talk of dog walking, dog grooming, livery services, and canine fertility going forward. Canine fertility is in bold there because out of the list, that's the one that I think is most likely to come online. Again, that is kind of an unknown for us. A lot of that is taking place underneath the radar. I'll just end with a summary of what we're asking for today, and that's me. I'll just stop sharing my screen. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Daniel. I'm see if members got any queries or questions. Drew.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, thank you, Daniel, for the report. Nice to meet you. Though probably if I meet you face to face, I won't recognise you because I only see you on the screen here. But anyway, thank you for that. I suppose first of all, if you short-term lets, I mean, how confident are you when you're going around checking rules? How confident are you of the accuracy of the figures of the number of short-term lets? And I suppose what are the consequences of maybe people operating without a license if you come across that? And maybe are there any significant numbers of people who are just haven't bothered with a license and just continue as they've done for 40 years or whatever? I suppose as well, maybe you could comment on perhaps sometimes the length of time you take to maybe report back to on planning applications when it regards licensings of different kinds, short-term lets, other terms of license as well. That seems to be a problem. I suppose the biggest the biggest concern, I suppose, and it's probably since COVID really, is the lack of visibility of environmental health and the lack of access that members of the public have to your service. Because I know it came up as part of the Communities in Place committee there, whenever that was, week before last, where I just wonder how can people who are not technology aware, how can they get in touch with environmental health with any concerns or looking for advice? Are you able to provide that through, for example, service points, or do people just have to try and get in touch some way? Because I think a lot of phone numbers with the council people don't answer the phone. In the good old days, people certainly from north of Skye could just walk up to the environmental health offices in Portree and there would be people there. Now that all these doors are locked, nobody can get in. So I just wondered, how accessible do you think your service is, and could that be improved? Yeah, that's about it, I think, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. And I suppose that that probably gels what I was going to ask. When you look at the paper, we've got a pretty substantial team now in Skye. We've got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 officers. So that, in my opinion, should mean that we should be pretty responsive, to queries. I suppose the question is, in terms of these posts, Daniel, I'm assuming that if somebody is a designated environmental health officer or a short-term technical officer, there is cross-working. So if one area of the service is really, really busy and the other area isn't, the question is, can somebody be supporting another officer? Because I think that's really important. My question is specifically about abandoned cars. We've gone up 20. The public generally think it's a heck of a long drawn out process to get any action taken on an abandoned vehicle. Now, I know there's going to be a workshop on abandoned cars at Redesign this week, which I will be attending, but the frustrations people feel about abandoned cars, the police say it's not their responsibility, environmental say it's it's just that lack of confusion. So are we hoping that there'll be very clear guidance on what the steps are to try and deal with abandoned cars? Because we do have scenarios, and I've witnessed them here in Killakin, where somebody has decided they don't want their car, so they drive them to somewhere, they park it and they leave it and it's left there. They think that's their responsibility for the vehicle gone. So that was my queries. And we'll finally go to Chrissy, and then you can answer all three of us, Daniel.
Just within the report, it really does highlight the scale of the work that you guys are actually involved in, even with the increased number of staff and things like that. I'm just curious, do you have additional administration, admin support to back up officers and what you're doing? Obviously, I'm assuming you've got quite is there admin support? Would something like that help? How does that all tie in?
Okay. One or two things there for me to get my teeth into. Hopefully, I've managed to jot down the questions that the three of you have, starting with Councillor Miller. So I'm relatively content with the numbers that I'm reporting today with regards to the numbers of short-term lets that are operating on Skye. I'm not aware of large numbers of short-term lets operating without the required licenses. It's not something that we've been inundated with. That's not just on Skye, that's across Highland. It's not a significant issue as far as I'm aware there. Obviously, if you are aware of any that are operating without the licenses, then we would be very interested in seeing those and bringing those to compliance. He then went on to ask about sort of the timings that we take for consultation on planning applications, licenses, and various other things. And yeah, I'm not going to sit here today and say that I think the service that we've been providing is everything that it should be. I think that there have been delays. That's not just on Skye. That's just sort of more generally. It's a function of the volume of work that we have and the recruitment issues that we face as a service. You may or may not be aware there is a Scotland-wide, there is a UK-wide shortage of qualified environmental health staff. The environmental health staff that we have are aging, which is both good because they bring a lot of experience, but also it's bad because they are at some point going to retire and leave us a bit short. One of the things that we're looking at is how we can build resilience within the service. So you will note that there is a new post that's been created on Skye. It's currently out to advert. We've had to delay the interviews there slightly because I was hoping to bring Coiler in as part of that interview process. One of the things that we'll consider is if we can't get qualified staff to hit the ground running there, how do we build in sort of growing our own? It's something that I'm very, very keen on as a service. Now, before I was the area manager for the North area, before the restructure, I was managing the teams in Caithness and Sutherland, and I've been piloting in the Sutherland office training of locals into posts. So we have multiple officers now across Highland on environmental health training courses. The most far along of those is due to hopefully qualify in the autumn. We have 2 more who are going to be the following autumn. We have a food safety officer who's going to be qualifying hopefully next year. And these are people that we have taken from, in at least one instance, we've basically appointed them from a school kitchen, and we've put them through various bits of training to bring them on and develop them. The reason I mention this is that, yes, in order for us to provide more time-use responses, we need some additional resourcing. I think you also mentioned then the public access to services, and for people who are not technologically aware, how can they contact us? I think it's interesting. Environmental health still do have quite a lot of contact details up on the website. I think if you compare us to other services, I'm hopeful you'll think we come across quite favourably. You'll also see in the appendix to this report there are local contact details for those officers. What I will say is that we're in the hands of the sort of the general service point provision and the general staffing of those offices in order to be able to provide a public facing resource. We are not able to have environmental health staff available to see members of the public without appointments. We are, however, able to provide officers to see people on appointment at various locations. As works for them. I'm really aware that as society moves on, stuff becomes more and more online and web based, and that's a dual-edged sword. It gives us better quality information when people contact us for making a request for service, but also it can exclude individuals. As far as I'm aware, people should be able to present to the various service points and be provided with assistance in filling in our forms if that's appropriate. Then Councillor Finlayson, substantial team on Skye, and you spoke about cross-working between specialist officers. Yes, absolutely. Stuff that we do. We use our resources in, I hope, a relatively efficient and effective way. Unfortunately, we've had some absence on Skye for the last couple of weeks, so I've been covering work. I stay up in Caithness and up between Wick and Thurso, and I've been covering work on Skye. What we do is we use the local technical officers, whether that's short-term lets, private water supply officers, to go out and do on-the-ground fact-checking and fact-finding for us. I think what I also say is that sort of illustrates reiterate some of the changes that we've put in with our new restructure. Obviously, with me now having operational control across sort of 4 area offices, I'm able to better support and plug gaps as they develop. So I'm hopeful that our service delivery will improve. We're then on to the abandoned vehicles and the processing time, and as you've already mentioned, there is the workshop, I think, on Thursday afternoon, which I'm hopeful will be very valuable. I think one of the issues that we face here is, and I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail because I'm mindful that at least 2 of you, I think, will probably already have heard this at least once, is the difference between an abandoned vehicle and a nuisance vehicle. So obviously, if we're dealing with an abandoned vehicle, it has to meet the definition of abandoned vehicle in the legislation. Unfortunately, the definition of abandoned vehicle in the legislation isn't as robust as we would perhaps like. So one of the things that we're looking at is better setting expectation with regards to what is an abandoned vehicle and what is a nuisance vehicle, what is a parking issue, what is a DVLA issue, what is a police issue. But fundamentally, for the members of the public, none of that really matters. We need to resolve those issues. So there needs to be elements of better joined up partnership working. And I'm aware that we're working with DVLA to get an operation up in the Highland region. Again, I'm very hopeful that that will be happening in the next number of months. And the improvement workshop on Thursday will result in a paper going to the Community in Place Committee in, I think it's August, which I'm hopeful will better set what we can and can't deal with. Officers absolutely share members' concerns. We share the concerns of the members of the public. You know, no one wants to come to work and get harangued by a member of the public for an abandoned vehicle that's been there for 12 weeks. You know, our officers want to move stuff. We want to get stuff removed where we possibly can. And what we've also done is we've got a new process in place to better control the cost recovery side of that. So what I can say is where we have a registered keeper and where it is possible for us to seek cost recovery, we are seeking cost recovery. I've had a conversation with the functional lead for abandoned vehicles just this morning, and we're potentially looking at, and this is very early stages, but we're potentially looking at whether a report to the Procurator Fiscal is appropriate for certain individuals who have numerous abandoned vehicles. Not on Skye, but I think of interest just more generally, that we are looking to ramp up the action that we take. It is not acceptable. It is absolutely not acceptable that somebody can park up a car and then walk away from it and face no consequences. We have to, though, act within the constraints of the legislation, and unfortunately, that does take longer than I think any of us would like. We've streamlined processes, we've developed automation in there, and this picks up on the point that Councillor Gillies was asking with regards to the scale of the work and the admin support that we have. We have effectively 2 operational support officers, one in the north and one in the south, that help us with in fact, they help us quite significantly with the data collection that we've used for the reports that you've seen today. They help us with developing our systems and our processes. We use business support to process the miscellaneous licenses so they are animal boarding, riding establishments, things like that environmental health process. But fundamentally, and I know I don't look old enough, but when I started in local government in the 90s, I had a typist, I had admin support who were doing filing for me, I had all of that. Now officers are expected to do all of that themselves, so that is, well, it's part of the job. It does take time. So following on from visits, there is normally a period of time when officers are back in the office writing up reports, doing data entry for data collection, so we can report on what they're doing. I think one of the things that we've looked at with our service redesign is how we can best deliver that those services. And one of the things that I've been pushing myself is making better use of the case management system that we have to automate those processes. There's very little value in having highly skilled officers carrying out mundane work if we can automate that in the system. And that's one of the things that we've really been pushing in the first instance with the abandoned vehicle process. An awful lot of the abandoned vehicle process is now I'm not going to say automated, but it is now embedded within our case management system that will generate letters. It will generate notices just on the click of a button. Now, I'm really mindful I've just been talking for a fair few minutes straight, and I'm hopeful that just looking at the notes I made for your questions, I've covered everything.
Yeah, well done, Daniel. Yeah, I mean, that was very comprehensive. And thank you for covering the sickness in our area, because it is important that scenario is covered so that we are getting the service locally, and we hope that the officer who's off will return soon. So thank you very much, Daniel, and I'm sure we'll be in touch, and we wish you well in your new post.
Thank you kindly. It's very good to meet you all.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, members, I think we've got Margaret with us. Yep, yeah, so we'll move on to we'll go back to the Housing Management Performance Report. Margaret, how are you? Good to see you.
I am good. Thank you very much. Good morning, or good afternoon, actually, I should say. Thank you for being patient this morning. I thought there was going to have to be a bit of reorganisation. Thank you. So I'm pleased to present to you today the Housing Performance Report for the period 1st of April 25 to the end of Q4. As you know, this report provides key performance information, which is largely based on the reporting framework recommended by the Scottish Housing Regulator, with the exception of data around homelessness, which are agreed indicators for reporting to local committees. And I do hope that you find the data interesting and useful. I'd like to draw your attention to some key parts of the report. Section 6 covers all aspects of our performance and rent arrears. There's been a significant reduction in arrears when we compare with Q4 last year, and our performance remains strong. The arrears across this area constitute 4.25% of annual rent due, and that figure is less than the Highland-wide figure of 5.46%. We can see that the majority of the arrears are less than £500. No notices of proceedings were raised in Q4, and thus no court actions were initiated. And I think that demonstrates the commitment of the team to sustain tenancies and signpost vulnerable households to appropriate support. Going on to section 7, that relates to antisocial behaviour complaints, and thankfully across the area the level of complaints is extremely low, and we currently have no open cases. Moving forward, section 8 of the report gives us some data around homelessness. In Q4 we received 19 homeless presentations, and table 6 will let you see that the number of presentations, it does not vary hugely across the quarters really. Table 8 shows us that the majority of people presenting homeless across the area have a 1-bed need, and that won't be news to you. That's always the case. Lastly, we look at some data around allocations, and we can see that in Q4 we were able to allocate 4 properties. There's a low turnover, as you know, with 50% being allocated to non-homeless households. And that's basically my summary of the report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, thanks, Margaret, as always. Good to see the rent arrears figure is down. And I think the point you make around about the homelessness figure has been mainly for one person. I suppose I think we've discussed this previously, where we have properties where there is one person living in the property, but it might be a 2 or a 3 bedroom house, and they've retained that tenancy because maybe there's been a family split or whatever, and so they have space for when children come to visit. I suppose my question is, at what age are the young people when that ceases? And if we have a scenario where we've got one individual in a 3-bedroom house and the children are, say, 16 or 18 or beyond, what action can we take to make sure that we get that house maybe back into family use and also provide the resident with a property that meets their needs better? I'm assuming that's an ongoing conversation. And do you think that is an issue across Highland?
Do you want me to answer that just now, Councillor?
Yeah, I'm not seeing any other hands, so you can go for that, Margaret.
No. Yeah. Age 16, it would be the age where a person would be considered to be an adult, and the access points, if you like, wouldn't apply. As part of the HHR policy review, I have been told that the right sizing scheme has been approved. And I don't have the fine detail of that, so I'll not be able to give you that. But basically, we would look to incentivise anybody who wishes to move into a more appropriately sized property.
Okay.
And that applies to the scenarios that you've painted, you know, that you've spoken about just now. Now, we're speaking about people's homes here. There's no compulsion unless a property's been heavily adapted and we have a household with a great need for that adapted property, then this would all be about conversations with people. Nobody is compelling people to sit in properties that are too large to move, but we are looking to incentivise it.
Okay, thank you. Drew?
Hey, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Margaret. Good afternoon. How are
Good
you?
afternoon. I am very, very good. I had a lovely weekend in Skye this weekend.
Oh, well, I
Yeah.
must have known you were coming because I moved to Harris for the weekend. So there we go. You shouldn't have told me you were coming over. No, you should have. I would have stayed and met you. No, I just, yeah, I mean, thanks for the report. It was good. Just maybe following on what the chair was saying there, he's obviously inspired me to think seriously about what I was going to say to you. So, obviously, you work in partnership with Housing Association regarding allocations, etc. Yeah?
Yes, we do.
So, you know how for a long time now we've been looking at the new housing in Portree, for example, where the sort of the idea of care, a care village sort of thing. So, I mean, are you having any input with the Housing Association as to what you would see as your vision for providing a suitable housing for people who, for example, might be needing to downsize, so that they will be sort of looked after, maybe appropriately, shall we say? And the other point I was going to ask you about, I mean, how active is the council in looking to be purchasing properties that are maybe going up for sale on Skye that could be used for social housing of some kind? I haven't really seen any sort of information over the last year or so about how you're progressing that sort of policy about trying to get some housing back into the rental market. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go to Chrissy, then you can come back in, Margaret.
Thank you.
Chrissy?
My question, this is kind of coming back to the rent arrears element of it, and we discussed this previously, is the number of people who are technically in arrears, but it's just because of the way the support payments are made. Is there a way of actually £500 mark or around that? Because I mean, I know from costs for like monthly costs and stuff for rent, it's usually kind of around the £400 to £500 mark at the moment. So I mean, I'm just having the assumption that a lot of those aren't actually in arrears. It's a system technicality. Or am I getting that completely wrong?
Thank you for that. I'll come back to you shortly after I've answered Councillor Miller. Thank you for the questions. At a personal level, I'm not working with the RSLs, but I absolutely know that at a strategic level that is happening. We've purchased quite a few properties. There's various funds around. There is a key worker fund. There's still some monies coming from the Ukrainian fund to purchase properties. So yes is the answer. But your question should really be directed towards the development team, Councillor Miller. They will be able to give you much more accurate information. And I would hate to give you wrong information. But that is happening. Properties have been purchased for social housing.
Thank you. Thank you.
I was involved in the Caithness stakeholder project a few years ago, where they spoke about forming care villages where there would be extra care housing next to health centres, and it was an amazing idea. Now, for various reasons, it fell by the wayside, but there's lots of evidence that tell us how these care villages can really improve the lives of people, I have to say. Councillor Gillis, technical arrears, is there such a thing as a technical arrear? Well, it's not a system problem that the Highland Council have. The fact remains that Universal Credit, the Department of Work and Pensions, pays the Universal Credit housing element, which is the rental payment, in arrears. So anybody who receives full housing element many of them are carrying that kind of level of arrears. But an arrear is an arrear. Yeah, you're on silent, Councillor Gillis, if you wanted to. Yeah, but I know what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm just agreeing and nodding.
Yeah. Now, we did have figures. I think it was Councillor Stewart, maybe 2 committees ago, or maybe even last committee, who asked for a breakdown. I can again give you those figures, but I have to redact it, and I'm not sure that it actually gave us the story that he wanted it. Councillor Finlayson, would you agree with that?
Totally agree.
Yeah. So I don't think there's actually much point in that, Councillor Gillis. But those kind of £300 and £400 arrears, many of them certainly are because Universal Credit Housing Element pays in arrears. We try to encourage tenants to pay an extra wee bit every month so that over the coming years they will eventually return their account to. But we have to recognise that people are struggling, and that's not always easy.
Okay, Margaret, we know how busy you are. We know you've got other things on the agenda for today. So thank you very much for coming to committee and for presenting us with this report. And I'm glad you enjoyed your weekend in Skye. You did bring the rain with you, but not to worry. And we look forward to seeing you again soon.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye.
Okay, members, we're now turning to our last report, the road maintenance update. And I'm delighted to welcome to committee Andrew Bowen, who has recently been appointed as the roads operational manager for Skye and Raasay. And the previous incumbent has moved on to a more strategic role within the council. So thank you very much indeed, Andrew, for your report. I think probably the best way to approach this, you've given us a very clear outline of the works that are taking place and the works that have been ongoing probably right throughout the year. So I think what we'll do is we'll maybe just go to questions and comments first, Andrew, and then you can come in and answer these. And I'm happy to start off, and then we'll go round members. Okay, so first of all, can we thank you, Andrew, for attending the Ward Forum recently, which was out with working hours with community councils. I think that was very useful to community councils to understand better the whole issues around about capital funding and revenue funding. So that was really appreciated. So my questions relate to the paper and the programme. Really, what's happening with the surface dressing programme? I understand that it maybe have to be curtailed somewhat because of the lateness of getting maybe materials, but I still think we need to do some surface dressing to understand when that might start. We know there are real concerns about lining, even when we're doing road improvements in specific areas. We believe that there is a lining lorry maybe coming back to our area. Where are we with that? We know there's a capital programme, Andrew, but at the same time, communities keep coming to us with reactive work, sort of work that's maybe just come up in a matter of weeks, or a pothole that's got bigger. It's really trying to understand, have we got the capacity to attend to that kind of reactive stuff? And recruitment, it'd be good to understand recruitment. We know that recruitment in all jobs within the council at the moment, for whatever reason, we aren't getting applications. So it's where are we with the recruitment? And finally, I noticed that the Sconser shed, Sconser quarry for the salt has been completed. So that's another success story. So just to thank you and the team for moving that forward. So these are my questions and queries. I'll go to Councillor Gillis, then Councillor Miller, and then you can come back in, Andrew.
Thank you.
Councillor Finlayson, you've managed to cover everything I was thinking about, so we'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Hey, Councillor Miller.
Well, there's not much left, to be honest. I think you have covered it all, and you know, I know it's not a big area, so I don't want to be too parochial, but I think it would be good. It just would be good to hear the update from yourself, Andrew, and maybe if there's any questions coming out of that, then we'll maybe try and find something different to ask. But I think your performance, shall we say, at the forum, I think was appreciated by everybody that was there. I think clarity is something that we need to get across to the public, how things work. So I'd like you to please respond to the chair, and then
consistency as well. It'd be quite good to be consistent, to turn up every time it's on, and to deliver everything you promise on. I think that's an important part of it too.
Okay, over to you, Andrew.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Councillor Finlayson, with regarding your questions, Surf Refresh programme update. So we are a little bit behind. It's the nature of this job sometimes. There's a few things that are holding us back. So as a road operations manager on Skye, we're ready to go. We have the chip and sconcer ready to go, and we have the Phoenix, which is the chipper, and the pneumatic roller. We have that ready to go. We're just waiting for the lab testing to be done in Inverness with the emulsion from Colas and with the sconcer chip. And we're also awaiting the Cartem and the sprayer. The Cartem's the holder tank that the emulsion sits in, and the sprayer is what gets the targets put into the sprayer and put into site. So we're still waiting for that to turn up. It's allegedly it's going to be here a week today. So that is pushing us back a little bit into where we'd like to be at this time of the year with regards to the weather, the easterly weather influence in our weather window. That said, we're ready to go. We have a programme and we're ready to deliver the programme. I'm going to start in the south, Kylakin, and then I'm going to go. I'm going to do the Armadale Road. And then we'll just see how we get on. We'll see how we got on with the time. The most of the chipping's in the south anyway, so even with those two schemes, that's a lot of the chipping. But I'll chip until somebody else needs the equipment, for sure. So right until now, the programme is going ahead as far as I'm aware. We're just waiting for the testing to come back and for the Cartem and the sprayer to turn up, and then we're good to go. The next question would be was about the lining programme. We were in receivership of their liner, which was down in Lochaber for a while. So we got that back up last week, and it's in with Charlie getting serviced. So that liner is a thermoplastic liner, so it heats up the thermoplastic material in a boiler, and it gets put into the shoe. So that's quite good for all our junction linings, which we need to do. However, I've asked Donny Ban last week to come up with a comprehensive programme we'd have to give that out to contractor to mark on to do all our lining, all our centre lining and such like. And also the lining we'll have to do after the chipping, because we'll need to reline the road after the chipping. So Donny's been working at that. I had a look at his work this morning. He's done really, really well in that. I think it'll probably finish by the end of tomorrow probably. And then we can take that to mark on and book them in to come and help us out with the lining there. Now, what was next? The emergency team, yes. So you can remember last March, we leaned on Ward 5's men to come over across the water to help us out to deliver an SSE money, wasn't it, on the Kilray Road. I think that's a great opportunity to use neighbours. So the Ward 5's position just now, they're almost finished their capital programme, so they'll have some opportunity to come across and give us a hand. Now, we can use those men to bolster any holes we may have in the squad with sicknesses or annual leave and special leave, such like. But if we're good with our numbers, we can use that team as a reactionary team to go around and hit all the CRMs and all the fears and concerns that you all get through community councils. We can be a bit more reactive on that. That's my hopes anyway for this year. Recruitment numbers. We have been recruiting. We've put a few people. We've got a couple of people in post in Broadford. I've got a staffing update. I can just read it out to you if you like. Currently on Skye and Raasay, we have one road officer. We have one operational support officer. We have 2 4-persons. That's one in Portree and one in Broadford who's acting up right now. I have an assistant 4-person, and I have 2 acting assistant 4-persons. And then I have 6 community works operatives in Broadford, and I have 8 community work operatives in Portree. On the recruitment side, we're interviewing this week for a community works officer and for 2 traffic management teams. There are 2 jobs currently advertised for the safety barrier team, and I'm awaiting for approval to be advertised 1 more community works operative and 1 roads inspector. So that's a recruitment up to date. You mentioned road adoptions. There are lots of roads that still need to be adopted. We are working our way through that long list. It's a bit of a convoluted process, but we're getting there. We're getting there. So that's ongoing. Did I miss anything out?
No, that's good. So I was just totting up that. So you're hoping, Andrew, that by the end maybe of the next couple of weeks, we'll have a complement of around about 25 in the roads team.
Let's have a go. 8, 14, 16. Yes, that's correct. 25.
Okay, that's encouraging. So let's hope that we get the recruitment sorted out. That's really helpful. Okay, I'll go back.
Thanks, Andrew, for the report. Just looking through the list as well attached there. I mean, it's quite amazing the amount of work that's going on that maybe people in one particular part of the island don't see because it's not at their particular part. So I think that list is pretty comprehensive. I think all the community councils I go to would certainly welcome the news of getting the white lining done. And I think even the council would welcome it because all the good work that's being done is not really highlighted by the lack of white lines. If the white lines were there, people would see it and then say, wow, they've done this stretch. That's fantastic. So I think it's probably the most important part of the future, not for your future, but the future of the roads, is to have this, get the white lining machine in, get it working, and let people see what the difference it makes. And well, I'm sure you know well yourself, if you're traveling at night time, especially from October onwards, it's very difficult for meeting oncoming traffic. And that's the biggest complaint I get from the community councils, is they don't know where the need of white lines to help, because it's crucial. Modern day lights in cars are a bit of a nightmare now. So we'd welcome that. And also I think the good news of you're hoping to recruit for the traffic management squad, which will save the council a lot of money and make things maybe a lot more efficient as well. I think it's good that you're still obviously trying to, and Chairman's highlighted the fact the total there. I think, I know recruitment's difficult on Skye, but I'm glad to see now that you make a workforce that can cope with the amount of work that's needed. So I think it's a good news report, and just thank you for it. I've got 1 or 2 things that maybe I will raise with you by email, etc., for parochial stuff around Portree. And I know you've dealt with Calacan very well in the report today, so I won't mention that again. But I suppose the only bugbear is the state of our car parks. So I should have maybe mentioned that when we were having our meeting a couple of weeks ago. But I started at the Broadford car park, Portree car park. I was over at the Dunvegan Community Council just a few days ago there. It's needing repaired, and I know that's a contentious issue with parking, etc. But I hope that we could get a solution to that, and I would congratulate the men for patching Broadford and Portree car parks. I think that's made a big difference, and I know I've spoken to one of the foremen personally, and I did thank him, because people driving certainly into the Portree and the Broadford car parks, if that's a first stop coming onto Skye, it's a vast improvement. I know it's only temporary, and I'm sure we'll get things up to a proper. Once you get the lining machine, we could get them surfaced and get them white lined, and it'll be great. But no, thanks for the report, and keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thanks for your kind words, Councillor Miller. The white line, I couldn't agree more with you. The most important thing is to delineate the two carriageways from each other. We make it all nice and flat, and we don't have lines. I think that's so important, and the edge lining as well. I couldn't agree more with you, Drew. Councillor Miller, sorry.
Okay, Andrew, I think you're hearing positive feedback, about the work that's ongoing. It is quite a comprehensive capital programme. Hopefully we'll get through it and get all our money spent. And I'm sure that there'll be engagement with the new strategic lead for roads on an ongoing basis, who'll be able to support both your aspirations and also our own aspirations. So thank you very much indeed, Andrew, for attending today.
Thank you, Councillor Finlayston. Thank you, members. Thank you.
Okay, members, that brings us, the last item on our agenda is just to note the ward discretionary budget awards. And I'm sure we're happy to do that, and also to note the minutes of the last meeting. Can I thank you all for your attendance today, both members and officers, and we'll see you again in the near future. Thank you.